Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Malo on football Friday afternoon. Friday afternoon, man. I hope you guys had an absolutely fantastic week with everything that's going on, man, in the world, in the world of football. So yeah, man. Malo on football, just a platform where I give my views on everything that's going on in the world of football, both locally and internationally. So if this is your first time, man, hit the subscribe button. Let's chat, man. Give me your views on everything that you guys want to discuss. So here we go. Today I want to talk about just footballers, man, and retirement. I recently watched Lebo Manyama talking about, obviously his injury that came up a couple of months ago, and that he is now officially hanging up his boots and that he is going to be retiring. We know he's had I would say, a very good career. Had a stint with Bafana Bafana. He's played overseas. We know he was at Cape Town City, where I think for me, probably played his best football. Played at Supersport United for a while. Kaiser Chiefs towards, obviously the latter part of his career. So, yeah, man, I think a good player for me, in my opinion. I wouldn't say one of the best South African players we've ever had, but a real good human being. I think listening to some of his interviews, he was on Robert Marawa show, just talking about his injury and not being able to play football with his son, and hoping that he obviously heals, but he just doesn't feel that he'll be able to continue playing football. And I mean, at 32 years old, I mean, he's still quite young, if I'm to be honest myself. I mean, at 32 year old, retiring, from professional sports, professional football, we know that the career of a footballer is very short anyway. But I mean, I come from the era where players were retiring at 40, 41. You look at Buffon and Paulo Maldini and those type of players who I grew up watching. They would go. They were just machines all the way. But obviously, in this instant, injury is what is calling an end to his career. But I would want to see players, especially South African players, playing up until 30, 40 years old at the highest level. And I just don't know if we have that in South African football, where you still see many 38, 39, 40-year-old players still going. We see that a lot with goalkeepers maybe in Europe, but what is it, man? Is it a conditioning and looking after yourself and lifestyle and diet and just mentality and all of that? I think with South African players, and I'm not necessarily bringing Manyama into it, I'm just having a general discussion around retirement and South African players, that I feel that sometimes they retire maybe a bit too soon, and where potentially they could stretch it and play longer football and still serve. I mean, football is a short career anyway, 10 years, 12, 15. So the longer you can stretch it and keep your body, I mean, ultimately, your body is the only real asset that you will ever own, especially if you're an athlete. That's the one thing you have to look after. So you would think that athletes would, try their utmost to at least stretch their longevity and career as much as possible. But yeah, man, really unfortunate for him that his career had to come to an end. But I think after he left Kaiser Chiefs, really just, wasn't really the same player, thereafter. But overall, man, yeah, Lebo Manyama hanging up his boots. So, all the best in his future endeavors, whatever he plans to do. I mean, I'm also not sure. I mean, I don't think he was very outspoken in terms of business and what he plans to do. I mean, he speaks very well. He could, most likely be a commentator on Supersport. We see a lot of former players, Percy Tau and Stanton Fredericks and the like, taking up gigs at SABC and all these media outlets as analysts and analyzing of games. Or does he want to go a different route? Maybe he's got money saved up from his time overseas, and he wants to pursue business and other things. I just really hope for him he doesn't just end up as one of those players who, especially from a South African point of view, who 5 years down the line we hear that he's on the streets and he's struggling and he's in bad condition and his health is deteriorating, and you know how it goes. I won't mention some of the players, but you see articles of many players after they retire and they just dwindle, man. They just become such a sad look for what was once, former good players. But yeah, man, talking about retirement, switching over to Europe, Theo Walcott, a player that obviously played for Arsenal, also retiring at quite a young age as well. Southampton obviously being relegated last season, and maybe for him that was just He started his career at Southampton, played for Arsenal, where I think a lot of people would remember him. Played under Arsene Wenger in the heydays of your Thierry Henry and Dennis Bergkamp and Eboe and all the great players that he shadowed and he learned from. But also another one who's deciding, he's done the full circle from Southampton all the way back now to Southampton, who unfortunately relegated, and he's looking at it and he says he was offered opportunities in Saudi even. I mean, we know what's happening, and I make videos a lot talking about what's happening in Saudi. So obviously he's had offers from Saudi. He says even some of the championship sides have reached out, but I think he just feels that he's just made that full circle back to Southampton. The last game, I think it was, he played against Arsenal and he actually scored. So Theo Walcott, man, hanging up his boots, speaking to Gary Neville on the overlap and just talking about his time and his career and just, how young he was when he broke into the limelight at Arsenal and for England. Obviously played at some World Cups, scored many goals, assisted a lot. And then Nasri came into the side and there was Fabregas, and quite an exciting time for Theo Walcott. And I mean, 18 years in the Premier League for Theo Walcott. And when you think about it, how many players do you know that have had 18 consistent years in the Premier League? So I must say, sometimes you look at these players and you're like, Theo Walcott, he didn't maybe reach the heights of maybe what a lot of people expected. But 18 years in the Premier League for any player is a long, long time. And so, yeah, man, big up for Theo Walcott. I also, with the interview, never got into, future plans, career, finance, and all of that. But, in Europe and how things are structured, this is a one big debate that I keep having regarding Europe and Africa, and especially South Africa and Europe, with regards to when players retire. There's at least, even when players are 16, 17, they're already drilling in financial education with regards to saving, with regards to buying property, assets. You've got a whole team around you that's structured and make sure that, when you do retire, you're not 5, 6, 7 years down the line gonna come back and on social media you're asking for handouts and all of that. I don't know, man. Maybe it's an African problem, but yeah, man, I don't really know what Theo Walcott's plans are. He talked a little bit about going into punditry. We know obviously Jamie Carragher, Micah Richards, Thierry Henry to some extent. Some of the players on that side are also going into punditry, and it seems like that's the route that he wants to go into media, analyze games he was talking about. So it'll be really interesting to maybe see, man, in a couple of seasons, Theo Walcott, I think Sky, that side, have approached him to do some work with him, maybe analyze some games. I mean, he's still relatively quite young. I mean, he's going to be analyzing games of people that are older than him, and, it's going to be really interesting to see what he does with his career. So match day 2, guys, in the Premier League. Arsenal obviously playing Crystal Palace in the Monday night game. I never like playing on a Monday. I always feel that you're watching other teams go 6 points ahead, collect points, this and that, and ultimately it swings and rounds about. At the end of the day, everyone's going to play everyone, but I just always find playing on a Saturday and Sunday is better, and let other teams watch what you've done when you've collected your 3 points. But hey, man, big game. I think it's going to be quite an interesting one. We saw obviously Olise there, who was wanted by many teams, including Chelsea, now committing himself to the future of Crystal Palace. I think that is 4 years. So from an Arsenal point of view, Timber, for me, man, the injury of Timber at left back really comes at a massive loss. I think he was a player that really offered that dynamism, that enthusiasm that we needed from a defender who can play on the left and the right in multiple positions. But unfortunately for him, he's torn his ACL ligament, so it looks like he'll probably be out for, they say, 8 months. He's probably looking at the whole season, to be honest. So obviously Arsenal needing to fill that particular position in that particular game. But a lot of big games coming up. I know Man U have a big game. I think they're playing against Spurs. I think Newcastle are playing Manchester City. So a lot of great football games to be watched, man. And as well, obviously, on a local front, we'll see what happens in those particular fixtures. But obviously, man, my focus is on the Premier League and everything that's going on there, the greatest league in the world, man. So yeah, man, let me know your views on the weekend, what you think, possible lineups, predictions, what you think about retirement, man, and my topic for today. And what do you think about, when European players retire versus when African players retire. Maybe South Africa, let's be a bit more specific. And yes, it's not in all instances, but it is sad to see when some South African players who are at the top, playing at top teams even abroad, and after a couple of years they just dwindle, man. We want to see success stories. We want to see that Manyama retired, and in 5 years down the line he's got a business, it's booming, he's in constructions, he's got a franchise of KFC or whatever the case may be, and he's doing well, man. He's looking after his family. He was speaking about his son, wanting to play football with his son. So all the best, man, to Lebo Manyama as well as Theo Walcott in terms of what they do with their careers, man. And yeah, Malo on football, match week 2 in the Premier League. Looking forward to seeing what's happening with all those games. And to Arsenal, man, let's do it. Another 3 points against Crystal Palace on Monday night. Malo on football. We out.